Hi everybody, Lukas and Cynthia here with Hometown Hero. Today we're going to be discussing a Substack written by Matt Zorn in regards to the rescheduling of marijuana. Thank you for joining us. Okay, this is interesting. It seems like there is a massive amount of misunderstanding around rescheduling. Rescheduling of marijuana is probably one of the most misunderstood things that I have seen so far in the cannabis space. Probably only second to regulations around hemp.
Mm-hmm.
So this goes into a lot of detail and actually brought up some very interesting things that I didn't know. I didn't know cocaine and crystal meth were Schedule 2.
Okay, so let's go up and then we can talk about the fun stuff.
Okay.
But so this guy is talking about potential marijuana rescheduling from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. And his point, what he does in the article is he talks about what it took to reschedule amphetamines. Okay, so this guy, Matt, he talks about back in I think 1971. And so his point is
1971.
What has to happen for marijuana to be rescheduled? And so there are people that are for rescheduling.
Based on what's happened in the past.
Yes.
For other drugs.
So there are people who are in favor of rescheduling. There are people who are not in favor of rescheduling. And so the two things that you have to look at are when you determine where in the schedule of drugs it should be placed is what is the potential for harm from that drug? That's how they decide.
Does the schedule level correlate to like the amount of time in jail you would spend for doing
No!
it? Wait, hold on. Wait, what?
So, according to him...
So what is the schedules, what's the purpose of them?
In other words, what is the relative risk of abuse compared to other drugs on different schedules?
Risk of abuse or risk of harmful effects?
Risk of abuse.
So the scheduling is based on nothing other than the potential of abuse.
Yes, and what's the...
I did not know that.
Yes, I didn't either. I was like reading this thing last night. I was like, what? So it gets even better. And he saves it. It's like the little Easter egg at the end or whatever. But
I'm kind of speechless on that one.
Yes, and I don't have my glasses on, but you can read this. So this is how amphetamines got scheduled.
Okay, although the CSA 21 USC 811B SUPP 1972 explicitly provides that the director shall be bound by HEW scientific and medical evaluation with regard to the substance to be controlled. HEW failed to submit any such evaluation as to the amphetamines. In fact, its evaluation, in quotes, consisted entirely of a one-page letter reiterating the criteria for Schedule 2, together with HEW's recommendation that the amphetamines met such criteria and therefore should be rescheduled. With no proof, no nothing.
A one-pager is how amphetamines got scheduled.
Yeah, and I'm going to quote Matt Zorn here. Second, in the footnote 31, which one we just read, the article contains a cool nugget of important information revealing just how sparse the medical/scientific evaluation underlying the rescheduling of amphetamines.
So when you talk about marijuana rescheduling, is it going to be a one-pager? Are they going to do extensive studies? But listen, so marijuana is a Schedule 1. And so Schedule 1 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with no currently accepted medical use. They have no medical use and a high potential for abuse. Some examples are heroin, LSD, marijuana, ecstasy. I don't know what methaqualone is.
The quaalude, or lude as it is commonly referred to, was first synthesized in 1951 by an Indian doctor, that's dots not feathers, as a sedative, and was prescribed to stressed-out housewives with sleep disorders. But pretty soon, someone figured out that if you resisted the urge to sleep for just 15 minutes, you got a pretty kick-ass high from it. Didn't take long for people to start abusing ludes, of course, and in 1982, the U.S. government Schedule I them, along with the rest of the world.
And peyote.
Interesting. I didn't know peyote was Schedule 1.
Sure is. So a Schedule 2 is drugs or substances or chemicals defined as drugs with a high potential for abuse with potentially leading to severe psychological or physical dependence. That's where marijuana is.
These drugs are also considered dangerous. No, this is Schedule 2.
Yeah. marijuana Schedule 1.
Correct.
Schedule 2 is stuff like Dilaudid, Demerol, oxycodone.
Cocaine, methamphetamine, methadone, oxycodone, fentanyl. Fentanyl, which kills more people than anything on this list, is a Schedule 2, and marijuana is considered worse than fentanyl. Like, that is insanity.
And to be clear, I am not advocating, I'm not like, this is crazy about marijuana, but marijuana is cannabis. So the idea that cannabis in any way, shape, or form has more potential for abuse than cocaine, Adderall, or Dilaudid, or oxycodone, or Vicodin is unbelievable. To your point, mind-blowing.
Fentanyl. I mean, fentanyl is the most harmful thing on this entire thing. Like, the amount of people that I know that have been impacted by fentanyl, whether almost killed or killed, and everybody that I know that's been impacted by fentanyl, nobody wanted to take fentanyl. Like, look at Mac Miller. Mac Miller's death, he was taking a codeine pill in his head. That's what he was taking. They gave him fentanyl. He died.
I read somewhere, I don't know if it's true or not.
This is common. This is very common. I tell all my friends, if you go to a rave, if you go to a party, wherever you go, somebody has pills, do not take the pills. Fentanyl is in everything, and people are literally falling over and dying.
That seems like common sense. Don't take random pills.
It didn't used to make a difference.
It didn't used to be that way. You used to be able to, when we were younger, we used to be able to go to parties, and you could take a pill, and you didn't have to worry about literally dying.
Listen, you can't walk away from your drink. So, I mean, times are different. You know, it's just whatever. I mean, I took Vicodin one time after I had some pulmonary emboli or something. I think it was Vicodin. I had hallucinations. I have never had hallucinations trying my little low milligrams of THC. So
yeah, they've got where's codeine? I got prescribed codeine when I was younger for a broken collarbone.
Schedule 3.
I took one codeine pill, and I had to. That's less than 90. That's with the Tylenol. The one they gave me was full strength, so I don't know where it would show up on this list, but it made me sick. I couldn't take it. It was so strong that it made me throw up, and it literally, the effects of the pain relief. I had a broken collarbone, and the effects of pain relief were not worth me taking it. It was
that's how I felt
that
with
crazy.
That's how I felt with the Vicodin. I mean, like the hallucination. I was like, so I had pulmonary emboli, which is very, very painful. So like these blood clots are stuck in your lungs, and you can't breathe. And I was like, I will suck it up and deal with that rather than deal with hallucinations.
This is interesting. So on Schedule 4, they've got all the fun drugs that everybody likes to take, and are probably some of the most prevalently used prescription drugs on the planet. They've got Xanax, they've got Ambien, Tramadol, they've got all these products in there that Big Pharma slings them like nothing.
I had to look these up. I didn't know what these things were. I mean, did you know what Soma was? Soma is an underwear brand. Turns out it's almost also a drug.
Also,
Ativan,
Brave New World.
Ativan, I didn't even know what Ativan was.
Lorazepam, I've heard of that.
Lorazepam, yeah. So all these things are apparently have less potential for abuse than cannabis or marijuana. Evil marijuana. Out of context, somebody might think I hate marijuana.
Well, what's interesting about marijuana is, over the years it was always said it was a gateway drug, which I think that is largely been disproven. Just because you use marijuana doesn't mean you're going to escalate to heroin.
What?
And then
I think you smoke one joint and then you're mainlining heroin.
No, you jump out the window like in Reefer Madness. You just run and jump out the nearest window. That's how it works.
But look at ketamine and testosterone are Schedule 3.
What I was getting at is I don't believe marijuana has really addictive properties. That being said, I can stop using cannabis products and literally not care. I enjoy using them to work out, but if I don't have access to cannabis products,
you're not jonesing.
It doesn't matter to me.
But if you eat cookies with sugar every day for a week and then you don't have a cookie, you will be jonesing for sugar.
Quitting sugar was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm a sugar addict, straight up. I love sugar. Quitting sugar, I went through physical withdrawals. I was sick. For 3 days, it was hell.
I don't have it, but there's a report that says that if sugar was introduced today, it would be a controlled substance because it's so addictive. I don't have a link for it, but it's out there.
Is caffeine on this list?
No.
Sugar's not on this list either.
No. Because they don't have potential for abuse.
Sugar is arguably the most abused drug on the planet.
I had 2 cups of coffee yesterday and 2 cans of Celsius. I feel like that was a lot of abuse of caffeine. I was really tired though. But, I mean, isn't that insane? And so then we get to this. It's this arbitrary 1-page document that lets them determine where on the schedule they put something.
So just to be clear, this is on the DEA's website. This is the broad description of the drug schedules. Drugs, and quoting the DEA here, drugs, substances, and certain chemicals used to make drugs are classified into 5 distinct categories or schedules depending upon the drug's acceptable medical use and the drug's abuse or dependency potential. So there is a factor of its acceptable medical use combined with its dependency potential. The abuse rate is a determinant factor in the scheduling of the drug. For example, Schedule 1 drugs, marijuana, have a high potential for abuse and the potential to create severe psychological and or physical dependence. As the drug schedule changes, Schedule 2, 3, etc., so does the abuse potential. Schedule 5 drugs represent the least potential for abuse. So this is interesting. It almost seems as though there's not necessarily like qualifying criteria.
No.
This seems very arbitrary.
Subjective.
Of like, this group believes this should be here, and so we put it here.
Yes.
Now that makes me question marijuana's
Everything?
proposal. Hold on. So that makes me question marijuana's proposed rescheduling from Schedule 1, which is horrific, going to end the world, to Schedule 3, which that makes me even more strongly believe it was a play by Big Pharma to essentially control marijuana. Now, if marijuana goes Schedule 3, it is essentially being handed to Big Pharma. Let's go to Schedule 3 and look what's in Schedule 3. Schedule 3 drugs. Substances or chemicals are defined as drugs with a moderate to low potential for physical and psychological dependence. Schedule 3 drugs abuse potential is less than Schedule 1 and Schedule 2 drugs, but more than Schedule 4. Some examples of Schedule 3 drugs are products containing less than 90 milligrams of codeine per dosage unit, ketamine, anabolic steroids, and testosterone. These are things that
Nobody's ever abused testosterone.
Well, these are all things.
That's physical dependence.
These are, just so we're clear, these are all prescription drugs. All of these.
Mm-hmm.
Every single thing in Schedule 3 is a prescription drug.
Yes.
So what does that tell you?
What? So marijuana would then become a prescription drug? Is that what you're saying to me?
On the federal level.
Because if you were really going for freeing the plant, would you not be pushing for Schedule 5 or just descheduling entirely?
Well, alcohol is not on here.
What is Schedule 5? What's on Schedule 5?
Schedule 5 is
Schedule 5 is just 5 drugs. Schedule 5 is the bottom category. Schedule 5 drugs, substances, or chemicals are defined as drugs with lower potential for abuse than Schedule 4 and consist of preparations containing limited quantities of certain narcotics. Schedule 5 drugs are generally used for antidiarrheal, antitussive, and analgesic purposes. Some examples of Schedule 5 drugs are cough preparations with less than 200 milligrams of codeine or per 100 milliliters, Robitussin, Lomatol, Modafinil, Lyrica, and Parapectilin.
so cough syrup.
Right.
Yeah.
Cough syrup is 5.
Well, some of those you can buy over the counter. Some of them you still have to get a
Yes,
prescription for.
yes.
Even so, 5 would be better.
Well, it says less than 200 milligrams of codeine per 100 milliliters. So if it has more than that, I think it's the over-the-counter.
You can't buy codeine over the counter.
Well,
It's prescription. All codeine
that's what I
is
mean.
prescription.
I mean, prescription, not over-the-counter.
Right, but like Robitussin you can buy over the counter.
In my mind, being able
But
to
this
grab it off the
lists
shelf-
Robitussin with codeine. This isn't normal Robitussin.
Right. No. It's combined. It's Robitussin with
it
codeine.
cited Robitussin AC as the product as a
Right.
reference
Okay.
for the
Yes.
the 200 milligrams.
So we need to. So I mean, it needs to be descheduled then.
Right. So why are you pushing for a schedule as opposed to descheduling? Right? Why are all these efforts going into rescheduling instead of descheduling? And all the people who support rescheduling, like, what are you going to mount this massive effort again to go from a 3 to a 4 and then from a 4 to a 5? Like, what's the logic
Once it's in 3, it's not going to move.
It'll never move.
So the marijuana industry, maybe they haven't realized this. they need to be fighting descheduling like crazy. Rescheduling. And essentially be fighting to get it off of this list, or at the very least down to 5. But honestly, even 5 seems a far. I mean, it's marijuana versus codeine.
But to go back to your thing when you were explaining how drugs are categorized, the idea that I can say, oh, you need to. Do you know what Baker acting is?
No, tell me.
In Florida, when you Baker act somebody is because they're acting irrational. So you can involuntarily commit someone. You just need like 3 people to sign that this person is acting irrational. Yes. Yes.
So if I have 3 people that don't like me?
Yes. So the point is that it's very subjective. So here we have this article where he talks about how it's a 1-page document that made them decide to put amphetamines. And I'm not saying they were right or wrong. I'm just saying 1-page document. They decided that amphetamines belong in Schedule 2. But the subjective part is that psychological behavior or dependence or whatever, it's subjective, right? Because you could say, you know what, Lucas?
Well,
Lucas could say, Cynthia, you're using too much. I think you're dependent. That's him. Now you're going to go Baker act me, and I'm overblowing and overgeneralizing, but that's what we're talking about, right? So somebody is deciding what this potential for abuse is, and here with amphetamines, it was 1 page, right? But like, I mean, I was talking about this last night, and the response to me was, you can be, and I wouldn't know, but the response was, you can be super productive on cocaine. And I was like, but you can't have it, so.
I mean, the fact that acid and psilocybin is Schedule 1 too is also, like, there's no physical dependence. You can abuse them, but you can abuse caffeine, you can abuse sugar, you know what I mean?
Caffeine yesterday.
Psilocybin's not listed as Schedule 1, just a heads up.
Well, these are just examples. This is not the full list.
Is psilocybin
I'm
Schedule 1?
pretty sure it is, because I think it's up there with acid.
Yeah, that's not the full. They have a link to the full list of all drugs.
Because I guess like fentanyl makes sense. It technically does not fit into Schedule 1 because there are medical uses for it.
Well, that's the thing. There have to be no medical uses for it.
No medical uses. But I mean, it seems weird that, okay, yeah, there may be, there are more medical uses coming out for psilocybin and acid, but there weren't when this was created. The physical dependence part is the part that doesn't fit any of that criteria.
Right. Well, that's why they say and or.
Oh, it's and or.
It's and or.
This is a full list of everything in Schedule 1 along with marijuana.
May include. So I don't know if it's a full list.
That list might be gigantic, honestly.
Yeah, exactly.
So this is a more detailed list of what's in Schedule 1. I'm going to read through them just so everybody understands what's in the same category as marijuana. Heroin, LSD, marijuana, mescaline, peyote, MDMA, ecstasy, GHB, ecstasy, another ecstasy, psilocybin, synthetic marijuana, which is spice and K2, which people love to try and lump in with hemp, but that's not hemp. It's a completely different thing. Those are full synthetics. Methaqualone, quaaludes, cathinone, and caffeine, and then bath salts. There's some pretty hardcore, crazy stuff in there. And what's even crazier is some of the really hardcore street drugs aren't even Schedule 1s, they're Schedule 2s and Schedule 3s.
Yes.
But yet you've got marijuana lumped in with straight heroin.
I have to think that this is all with that. Do you remember when we did the video on the Reefer Madness movie and whatever? That, like, yes, you're going to smoke a joint and you're going to jump out the window. And that's the psychological disorder or whatever they called it. And I like that can be the only explanation for this. Otherwise, it doesn't make any sense.
This is fascinating. So a quick Google search on what year was marijuana made Schedule 1. Cannabis was made a Schedule 1 drug in 1970 when Congress passed the Controlled Substances Act. The act classified cannabis as a Schedule 1 drug because it was believed to have a high potential for abuse, no accepted medical use, and a lack of safety for medical use. Assistant Secretary of Health Roger O. Egeberg advised Congress to classify cannabis as a Schedule 1 drug, but his letter to Harley O. Staggers, chairman of the House Committee on Interstate and Foreign Commerce, indicated that the classification was intended to be temporary.
Ha! So, in the On Drugs article,
That's wild.
Matt Zorn said, this is the thing, government never scales back. This is the thing, and people are always like, oh, the government should do this, or we should open this new
Yeah, once you
agency
do
for
it,
that. It never goes away. It's more bloat.
We had a comment on the Florida one where the guy's like, well, I think this is a step in the right direction. Like, we shouldn't be against this because it's moving in the right direction. I'm like, but we're just giving more power to them to make sure it stays that way.
Let's be clear. This marijuana was made a Schedule 1 drug, which makes it illegal.
What? Federally?
Makes it federally illegal.
Yes.
Hemp's not a scheduled drug, is it? Ooh. We should do that hemp thing. So this article at the University of Arizona Health Sciences page says that since 1981, multiple proposals to remove cannabis marijuana from Schedule 1 category have been introduced and failed. So in 1970, they made it Schedule 1. 11 years later, the first attempt was made. That was now 43 years ago.
For this temporary designation?
I'm 43. That makes me feel old. 43 years ago, the proposal started to reschedule.
The effort
to reschedule, and we're now 43 years later, technically 54 years later since it was actually scheduled. 54 years later, and we're now still arguing about whether or not marijuana should be rescheduled.
Schedule 1 or Schedule 3. That's where we are today. 54
And it still
years
hasn't
later.
happened, by the
Correct.
way.
For something
Everybody,
that was meant to be
I
temporary.
get texts and I get emails every time something in the news comes about this. They're like, they're rescheduling it. And I'm like, bro, this has been going on for 50 years.
So Matt Zorn's article says, to determine where a substance is to be placed, if one accepts that marijuana has an accepted medical use, some do not, the inquiry is one on relative dangers. In other words, what does marijuana abuse look like relative to other substances like cocaine, methamphetamine, ketamine, and benzodiazepines? So the question is, what do the relative harms of marijuana look like compared to all these other drugs? What? Holy crap. Benzodiazepines, those get abused a lot, don't they? Tramadol is a Schedule 4. I had this terrible experience with half a tramadol, and my pain didn't go away. And it's a Schedule 4, and marijuana is a Schedule 1.
Right. And even based on like what Matt said about rescheduling, they compare it to other things on the list. It is under Schedule 5 for sure. You're telling me that low dose codeine has less capable or is less potential for abuse or less potential for adverse side effects than marijuana? I don't think so.
Side effects don't matter.
Or not side
effects. It's the potential of abuse.
Potential of abuse.
And the relative harm.
And relative harm.
And potential for medical use.
Right, if there's a medical use.
So Schedule 6 it is.
Well, what's interesting is that, there are people who do not believe that marijuana has any medical benefit.
I've heard numerous times now that with alcohol, there is no proven medicinal benefit to alcohol. None. Nobody's been able to scientifically prove some sort of medical benefit. But yet it's a drug and it's highly abused. One of probably the most abused drugs in the world, right? Mm-hmm. And yet it's not scheduled. No medical use, high potential for abuse, high potential for harm. Is there anything that kills more people than alcohol on an annual basis?
Maybe. I don't know. But prohibition is a failed concept, and they realized that after they tried to ban alcohol, and we know how well that turned out. So they just decided, okay, let's just make it an over 18 thing. Let's just make sure that it's being distributed responsibly, and we're good to go. And that's where we are today.
I don't see how cannabis, whether it's marijuana or hemp, I don't see how it should be regulated differently than alcohol.
I would like a tequila shot right now.
I mean, I can't drink alcohol. I'm allergic to it, but
Everybody's allergic to alcohol. Alcohol is a poison. Your body treats it as a poison because it is a poison.
Well, it's very poisonous to me.
Yes.
I don't like alcohol.
Yeah. Okay, so Matt Zorn, because we're not friends, Matt Zorn also says, this invites the question, what is sufficient analysis? So if you Google cannabis research or whatever, you will come up with tens of thousands of results.
Yeah, he references here, drop the word cannabis into PubMed, and 35,000 plus articles come up with nearly 15,000 in the past few years alone.
So the question is, and let's pretend that moving to Schedule 3 is good. Why is all this research not enough to move it over already? Like, why is the decision still? When did you say it started? The effort
1981.
1981. So all these studies are still not enough? Like, why?
Yeah, I mean, well, the same tactic was used in Texas against us, saying that hemp has no medicinal benefits.
We do need to research a product that's in wide distribution for its legitimacy in the way of benefits or not. And then if it is beneficial, work it to a form of where we can control quality as well as impact for those people that's cheap to do it. We don't, in your humble opinion as a medical professional, you don't have that data today.
I do not.
Okay, and that's a great answer. I just assumed it. THC is THC. So
right, that's what the marijuana industry said about us in Texas.
Oh, because only medical marijuana has medicinal value?
Well, according to the government, it doesn't have any value either.
Well, there's an entire market and a reduction in pharmaceutical sales of sleep meds, anxiety meds, and pain meds that would indicate otherwise.
You sent me an article yesterday that was extremely fascinating that cited every sort of region, call it a region or a state, that passes some sort of marijuana legislation making it accessible, whether it's medicinal or recreational. The big pharma takes a $10 billion hit in that area.
But that will not be allowed.
That is savage.
This shall not stand. Okay. Pharma behemoths will not be happy with this situation.
Terrifying. They're terrifying. I've seen what they can do to industries, and it is not pretty.
There used to be a thing called the BNDD, which is the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. It became the DEA later. But the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs.
I'm sure
most of the non-dangerous.
I like that.
You like it?
I like that better than DEA.
It's got a lot of punch. It's got a lot of impact. Well, yeah. DEA, drug enforcement, because after they banned everything, they didn't need the Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Now they needed to enforce on people, so we have to have the Drug Enforcement Administration. Yeah, or agency.
It's wild to me. It's sort of how much of this I've taken for granted, just as
nothing for granted.
Well, it just growing up and being told this is that and this is that and that's why. But when you actually dig into the facts behind it of why these things are scheduled the way they are, there is no logic and no sense behind any of it. It just seems like it's very arbitrary, and if somebody with influence wants it in a certain category, it goes in a certain category.
Welcome to government. This is how things work, and so I go back to
I feel like I was lied to throughout
You have been lied
about everything about the government.
Homeschool your children. They're being lied to. You've been lied to. Absolutely. This is the thing, is that government is a self-serving machine. I had a conversation, today's Wednesday, so last week. I was talking to somebody and they were like, oh, we need an independent party. There is no way that the Democrats and the Republicans, who are in bed together, they will never allow a third party, because this is a self-serving machine that will not be served by another party that drives a different agenda. So we are captives of the, so people who say, well, government should, or the state should, or you need to think through everybody become a libertarian, or an independent thinker at least. Point is that you cannot, so for people who say the government is only looking out for us and doing the right thing, you used a one-pager. They used a one-pager to decide how to schedule amphetamines. And for 54 years, marijuana has been a Schedule 1. So how great a job are they doing? Let's forget about taxes and budgets.
And all of the rescheduling around marijuana is proposed. Nothing has happened. This is proposed.
And depending on who wins the presidential election, rescheduling could get off the table entirely.
I'll bet you $100 it doesn't happen next year.
2025? Rescheduling doesn't happen. I'll bet you a cupcake.
All right. Deal.
I don't think it's going to happen either.
I don't think it matters who wins the election.
Really?
It's been 54 years.
That's a different bet.
What is
going to change?
Yeah. How is this any different? Any different at all?
I don't know. That's a really good point.
What's outside of Big Pharma? Now, Big Pharma is making their play and they want it to happen. That's a different
ballgame. Yes.
But let's be clear, this is not being done to serve the people or help anybody in any way.
Yeah, and it's funny because within the marijuana industry, not cannabis, because cannabis includes hemp, and we're not talking about hemp or overarching cannabis. In the marijuana space, there are a lot of people that argue with each other about whether rescheduling is good or not.
Well, that's my next question to you. I'm going to ask you, because I believe you are an expert in this, and I believe you understand it better than the vast majority of people out there. If marijuana is rescheduled to Schedule 3, what happens to all the states and all the businesses and everybody selling marijuana? That's
I don't know. I mean,
because technically it's already Schedule 1, but it's not being enforced. If it goes to Schedule 3, is there a continued lack of enforcement, or is it based on the premises of Big Pharma and if they want it to be enforced? Because at that point, they can send the FDA after people, right?
well, so it's all political will. And so the lack of enforcement at the federal level comes from the Obama administration and something called the Cole memo that was issued during that time frame, where they said we will not enforce against states if they decide to legalize.
Yeah, because when I was younger in California, the DA would show up and raid dispensaries.
Yes. So the Cole memo,
State legal, but federally illegal
Right.
dispensaries.
So Cole memo said we're not going to enforce against you anymore. Now, could that change with administrations? And also, what a quagmire for the FDA, because the FDA regulates drugs. It's not a question. So like marijuana or hemp products or whatever, these are kind of the consumable products and that kind of, they're kind of a new thing, right? So the FDA has to grapple with that. But once they are designated a drug, once marijuana is designated a drug, which clearly falls under FDA purview because they approve all drugs that end up on the market, is the FDA going to allow people to sell joints or flour?
Now I will say it probably won't happen immediately, but if you look at how this thing plays out and how we've seen other industries play out in similar regards, the move from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 is obviously backed by Big Pharma. It's in their best interest. Now, would they immediately shut down everything? Probably not. But what they'll do is they'll start implementing testing procedures through the FDA that nobody can meet, right? PMTAs, tobacco side, how they killed vapor. It's all through regulatory testing and regulatory approval that nobody in marijuana is going to be able to do. True Leave is going to be done. All these big companies that think they're big-time marijuana operators, all of them gone, wiped out.
There is a purity standard that has to be met for drugs. Good luck meeting a purity standard with like random flour and that kind of thing. And also, how are you going to control dosage?
Flour would go away.
Go away. How do you control dosage? How do you control how much you give somebody? How do you, these things?
The level of qualifications and criteria that FDA puts on an industry like Big Pharma, you transfer those stipulations over to marijuana, there is no company currently in marijuana that will be able to meet those.
What kind of joints does the FDA sell?
They don't sell joints.
What kind of flour does the FDA
Well,
sell?
the FDA
I mean, not the FDA, pharma.
They only do pills.
They do pills, they do capsules, they do little patches, and that is all, my friends. They don't even do tinctures.
They don't. Do they do gummies? There's some weird like flavored pills, but I don't think I've ever seen gummies.
Over-the-counter gummies, like, vitamin C gummies, but pharma is not putting out gummies.
Maybe they should start some Xanny gummies.
Oh my God, I think that would be a good seller.
I can't wait to see the commercial on that one.
Yeah, for sure.
So just to recap on everything, and then a quick comment. And so there's all this discussion around the rescheduling of marijuana and the potential changes. Can we just say that hemp is federally and state legal, is not currently scheduled, and doesn't look like it's going to be? So everybody that's all up in arms about the scheduling of marijuana, it largely doesn't matter.
Well, it only comes from the marijuana people, the neophytes, or the people who are uninformed about the situation. But they're like, oh, we have to legalize cannabis. It's already been legalized. Hemp has been descheduled. Hemp is cannabis. It has been descheduled. And for all those marijuana haters out there, not that they hate marijuana, but they're haters from the marijuana space. Hemp is doing your work for you because hemp is paving the way, and hemp is proof that marijuana states that have legalized marijuana don't have to have these onerous regulations and these onerous. The only reason those work is if you're a monopolist and that's what you want. Otherwise, hemp is an example of a free market industry.
You're 100% correct. Everybody in marijuana should be using hemp as the example of what to bring marijuana to, not bring hemp down to marijuana's level. It should be bringing marijuana up to hemp's level.
Yes.
And I think a lot of people in the marijuana industry are confused by that concept, but it's the one that serves them best.
Venture capitalist people.
I mean, I hear them talking and they have no clue how they could be making money on the hemp side. And I just listened to a webinar the other day and they were like, well, you know, the regulations are so burdensome on these businesses. They don't have to be. Like they don't. And so there's so many sectors. And even like if you talk to a random person on the street, how much do they know about the difference between marijuana and hemp, and how hemp is cannabis, and how that has paved, you know, the way to cannabis, you know, legalization? Like people are just uninformed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's why we do these videos.
Yeah. I learned quite a bit on this one. Thank you.
Yeah, I love this. I was so excited last night reading this. I was like, this is great.
Yeah, this is fascinating. And so, you know, thank you everybody for joining us. This has been really intriguing, talking about the rescheduling, the potential rescheduling of marijuana. It hasn't happened in 54 years. Might not happen anytime soon. So don't hold your breath. But just a deep analysis, deep dive on it is very fascinating in sort of how it's being treated in regards to other drugs and how this all could play out. So thank you for a wonderful discussion on that. You educated me with a ton of things that I didn't fully understand.
It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us as well. Lukas and Cynthia here with Hometown Hero. Happy hunting as always, and we'll see you next week.
I didn't know the difference between amphetamines and methamphetamines.